Before we dive into this story of resilience,
Every late
hidden
shift,
struggles, and the
every
unexpected
scraped-together
power of
dollar,
kindness,
it's all
please
for
take a
them.
brief moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more touching and realistic narratives to life. Thank you. The wind in Riverton Falls had a way of cutting through fabric, finding the skin, and settling there like a permanent guest. It was late November, the kind of cold that turned breath into distinct clouds of vapor, vanishing as quickly as they appeared. Clara Bennett stood outside the sliding glass doors of Riverton General Hospital, pulling her thin coat tighter around her frame. The automatic doors whooshed shut behind her, cutting off the antiseptic smell of the emergency room, replacing it with the scent of damp pavement and wood smoke from distant chimneys. It was Thanksgiving Day. While most of the town was tucked away in warm living rooms, surrounded by the smell of roasting turkey and sage stuffing, Clara had just finished a double shift. Her feet throbbed in a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. 12 hours on the floor, moving patients, checking vitals, offering comfort to families who were having the worst holidays of their lives. She was a nurse, a good one, but the economy of Riverton Falls didn't pay for good. It paid for hours, and even then it barely paid enough. Clara reached into the pocket of her scrubs, which she still wore under her coat, and her fingers brushed against the texture of paper. She didn't need to look to know what was there. She knew the texture of every single bill. A $10 bill and a $5 bill. $15. She closed her eyes for a second, doing the mental gymnastics that had become her default state of mind. Rent was paid. Barely. The electric bill was overdue by 4 days, but they wouldn't shut it off until the end of the month. The twins, Noah and Eli, needed winter boots. Their sneakers were starting to separate at the soles, gaping open like hungry mouths. $15, she whispered to the empty parking lot. It was strictly gas money. It was meant to get her old sedan to the clinic and back for the next 3 days until payday. But today was Thanksgiving. Earlier that morning, before she left, while the sky was still bruised purple with dawn, Noah had asked, "Mom, are we having the big chicken tonight?" He meant turkey. But at 6 years old, poultry was poultry. Eli had just looked at her with those wide, knowing eyes that seemed too old for a first grader, and said nothing. He knew. He always sensed the tension in her shoulders. Clara walked to her car, a faded blue sedan that had survived more winters than it had any right to. She sat in the driver's seat, the cold seeping through the upholstery. She stared at the steering wheel. "They deserve a memory," she said aloud, her voice cracking slightly. "Just one good memory." The struggle of the single parent is often invisible. It isn't just about the lack of money, it is the constant crushing management of disappointment. It is the art of saying no in a way that sounds like a choice rather than a necessity. But tonight, Clara didn't want to manage disappointment. She wanted to manage joy. She started the car. The engine coughed, whined, and finally caught with a rattle. She wasn't going to the grocery store to buy macaroni and cheese again. She was going to take them out. Not to a fancy place. That was impossible. But to a place where someone else cooked, where someone else did the dishes, where they could sit in a booth and feel like normal people participating in the holiday. She drove to Mrs. Gable's house, the elderly neighbor who watched the boys on holidays when the daycare was closed. The house was warm, smelling of boiled cabbage and old paper. "Mama!" 2 distinct blurs of energy launched themselves at her legs. Noah and Eli were identical in looks. Tousled brown hair, scraped knees, gaps in their teeth, but distinct in spirit. Noah was the loud one, the narrator of his own life. Eli was the observer, the one who held your hand when you didn't know you needed it. "Hey, my loves," Clara said, crouching down to hug them, ignoring the ache in her lower back. "Thank you, Mrs. Gable. I hope they were good." "Angels, mostly," Mrs. Gable croaked, adjusting her glasses. "Eli fixed my remote control. Smart whip, that one." Clara smiled, gratitude washing over her. She couldn't afford Mrs. Gable's usual rate, but the old woman often waved it off, accepting homemade cookies or help with her garden instead. It was the barter system of the working class, trading dignity for dignity. "Get your coats," Clara said, infusing her voice with a brightness she didn't feel. "We are going on an adventure." "Adventure?" Noah's eyes went wide. "To the park?" "Better," Clara said. "We are going to dinner at a restaurant." The boys froze. To them, a restaurant was a mythical place usually reserved for birthdays or the day Grandma sent a check. "The Rusty Spoon?" Noah gasped. It was the local diner, famous for its neon sign and pie display. "The Rusty Spoon," Clara confirmed, as she ushered them into the car, buckling them into their car seats, which were beginning to look a little small for them. The weight of the $15 returned. She did the math again. Kids' meals are usually $4.99. 2 of them make $10. Tax. That leaves less than $4. Maybe she could order a side of toast? No, she would just say she wasn't hungry. She had eaten a granola bar at the hospital at noon. That would have to be enough. She looked in the rearview mirror. The boys were vibrating with excitement, talking about French fries and ketchup. Clara gripped the steering wheel. This was a risk. If the prices had gone up, if there was a holiday surcharge, if the car broke down on the way, she was walking a tightrope without a net. But looking at their faces, illuminated by the passing streetlights, she knew the risk was worth it. This was an education in hope. She was teaching them that even when the world is tight and cold, there is still room for celebration. She just hoped $15 was enough room. The Rusty Spoon sat on the edge of Riverton Falls, right where the town began to bleed into the rural highway. It was an institution of chrome and red vinyl, a beacon of yellow light against the dark Thanksgiving evening. The parking lot was half full, mostly pickup trucks and older sedans, the vehicles of people who didn't have big family gatherings or who, like Clara, were looking for a warm place that didn't require an invitation. Clara parked the car, turning off the engine. The silence that followed was heavy. "Remember," she said, turning to look at the boys. "We have to be on our best behavior, inside voices, and we have to agree on what we order before we tell the lady, okay?" "Okay, Mom," they chorused. They stepped out into the biting wind and hurried toward the entrance. The bell above the door jingled cheerfully as they entered, a sharp contrast to the anxiety churning in Clara's stomach. The diner smelled of frying onions, coffee, and sweet cherry pie. It was a dense, comforting scent that immediately made Clara's empty stomach growl loudly. She pressed a hand against her abdomen, hoping no one heard. "Just 2?" the hostess asked. She was a teenager, chewing gum, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else on a holiday. "3," Clara corrected gently, placing her hands on the boy's shoulders. "We'd like a booth, please. Maybe in the back." She requested the back not for privacy, but for concealment. She didn't want the staff hovering. She didn't want the spotlight on the fact that the mother wasn't ordering. They were led to a booth upholstered in cracked red vinyl. The table was slightly sticky, despite being wiped down, but to Noah and Eli, it was a throne room. They slid in, their eyes scanning the laminated menus with the intensity of scholars studying ancient texts. "Look, pancakes for dinner," Noah whispered loudly. "Look at the prices," Eli whispered back, pointing to the numbers. Eli was the one who noticed things. He had seen Clara crying over the calculator last week. He knew what numbers meant. Clara's heart squeezed. A 6-year-old shouldn't know to check the price column first. "You can have whatever you want from the kids' menu," Clara said, her voice firm. She picked up the main menu, her eyes darting immediately to the right side of the page. Turkey dinner special, $14.99. Burger and fries, $12.50. Soup of the day, $6. She swallowed hard. Even the soup was risky if she wanted to leave a tip. And she had to leave a tip. Clara had worked as a waitress before nursing school. She knew that stiffing the server was a sin, especially on a holiday. The server was likely a mother too, or a student trying to pay tuition. The economy of the poor relies on mutual respect. You don't break the chain. I'm going to get the grilled cheese, Noah announced. $4.99. Me too, Eli said, with fries. Okay, Clara calculated. 5 plus 5 is 10. Tax is about 7%, that's $10.70. She had 15 $. That left $4.30. If she ordered a water, it was free. She could leave a $3 tip. That left $1.30, a safety margin. Mom, aren't you eating? Eli asked, looking up from his menu. Clara smiled, the practiced mask of motherhood sliding into place. I had a huge lunch at the hospital, honey. Dr. Evans brought in cupcakes, huge ones. I'm still so full. It was a lie. There had been no cupcakes, just the granola bar and lukewarm coffee. Are you sure? Eli pressed. Positive. I just want a nice glass of ice water and to watch you two eat. That's my treat. The waitress arrived. She looked to be in her 40s, wearing an apron that had seen better days. Her name tag read, Brenda. She looked tired, the kind of deep-bone exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. Happy Thanksgiving, folks, Brenda said, pen poised over her pad. What can I get you? 2 kids' grilled cheeses, Clara said clearly. With fries, please. And to drink? Apple juice, Noah shouted. Clara froze. Juice cost money, usually $2.0 or more. She hadn't factored in drinks. Actually, Clara interjected quickly, we're going to do water all around tonight. With lemons, right, boys? Lemon water is fancy. Noah's face fell for a fraction of a second, but Eli nudged him under the table. Yeah, lemon water, Noah corrected. And for you, hun? Brenda looked at Clara. Just water, please. Brenda paused. She looked at the 2 kids, then at Clara. She looked at the lack of a menu in Clara's hands. It was a look of recognition. In small towns, poverty has a specific language, spoken in glances and pauses. Brenda knew. You sure I can't get you a cup of coffee? It's fresh. Brenda offered gently. No, thank you, Clara said, her cheeks burning. Just the water. All right, coming right up. As Brenda walked away, Clara exhaled, her hands trembling slightly beneath the table. She had navigated the first hurdle. They were safe. They were seated. The boys were happy. She looked around the diner. It was filled with noise, clinking silverware, low conversations, the sizzle of the grill. But to Clara, the loudest sound was the mental calculation repeating in her head, over and over. $15. $15. Don't go over. She didn't notice the man who had just walked in. She was too busy counting the coins in her pocket, hoping she hadn't miscounted the change. The bell above the door jingled again, but this time the entry felt different. It wasn't a family bustling in or a couple arguing about where to sit. It was a singular, heavy presence. Lucas Hale stepped into the Rusty Spoon and immediately scanned the room. It was a reflex, not a choice. Even after being out of the teams for 2 years, the Navy SEAL training was wired into his neurology. He checked the exits. He checked the hands of the people at the counter. He assessed the threat level. Low, domestic, calm. He relaxed his shoulders, though the tension never fully left his trapezius muscles. Lucas was 34 but looked older. He had the kind of face that was handsome but weathered, like a cliff face eroded by salt and wind. A faded scar ran through his left eyebrow, and his beard was trimmed close. He hated holidays. Thanksgiving was the worst. It was a magnifying glass on what he had lost and what he had never managed to build. He had returned to Riverton Falls to find peace, to renovate his grandfather's old cabin by the lake, and to try to silence the ringing in his ears that wasn't tinnitus, but the echo of Kandahar. He walked to the counter, but then changed his mind. He wanted a view of the room. He pointed to a small booth in the far corner, diagonally across from where a woman and 2 children were sitting. Just coffee, he told Brenda as he sat down. Black. And the turkey plate. He didn't really want the food, but eating gave him a reason to be somewhere other than his empty cabin. Lucas pulled a small notebook from his leather jacket. He was trying to write. Journaling was something his therapist at the VA suggested. But the page was blank. Instead, he watched the room. His eyes drifted to the booth across the aisle. He saw the woman first. She was wearing scrubs under a cheap winter coat. Nurses. He had a soft spot for nurses. They were the ones who had stitched him up more times than he could count. But it was her posture that caught his attention. She sat with a rigid straightness, her hands clasped tightly on the table. She wasn't looking at her phone. She was watching her children with an intensity that bordered on desperation. Lucas watched as the waitress brought the drinks. 3 waters. He saw the woman squeeze a lemon wedge into the cups for the boys, making a game of it. He saw the way she smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes, which were clouded with calculation. He had seen that look before, not in a diner but in villages halfway across the world. It was the look of a parent trying to build a shelter out of nothing. It was the look of resourcefulness born of scarcity. Why isn't she eating? Lucas wondered. He watched as their food arrived. 2 grilled cheese sandwiches. Simple. The boys dug in like they hadn't eaten in days. The woman took a sip of water. "Mom, have a fry," one of the boys said, holding out a potato. "No, Noah, that's your dinner," she said softly. Lucas had excellent hearing. The ambient noise of the diner faded as he focused on them. "But there's too many," the boy insisted. "I'm really not hungry, baby," she insisted. Lucas frowned. He looked at her hands. No wedding ring, frayed cuffs on the coat. The way she had flinched when the waitress put the check down on the edge of the table, even though they hadn't finished eating yet. She had immediately picked it up, opened it, and he saw her shoulders drop about half an inch. Relief. She could afford it, but just barely. Lucas looked down at his own coffee, steaming hot. He thought about the bank account he rarely checked. His pension, his disability pay, the money he had saved from deployments because there was nowhere to spend it. He had financial security, but he was spiritually bankrupt. She was financially on the razor's edge, but she was pouring everything she had into those 2 boys. He felt a pang in his chest that had nothing to do with shrapnel. It was a recognition of honor. In the military, honor is about sacrifice. It's about taking the hit so the guy behind you doesn't have to. He was watching a civilian version of that same sacrifice. She was taking the hunger so her platoon, her sons, could eat. He couldn't just sit there. The code he lived by didn't allow him to witness a struggle and not engage, especially when the solution was so simple for him and so monumental for her. But he had to be careful. He knew about pride. If he walked over there and handed her $20, he would shame her in front of her sons. He would strip her of the dignity she was fighting so hard to maintain. He needed a tactical approach. Lucas signaled Brenda. When she came over to refill his coffee, he spoke in a low voice, barely a murmur. "The family in the booth over there," Lucas said, keeping his eyes on his notebook so the woman wouldn't notice them talking about her. "The nurse and the twins." "Yeah," Brenda said, glancing over. "Sweet kids. She's struggling, though. Ordered water and nothing for herself." "I know," Lucas said. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet. He extracted a crisp $50 bill. "I want to pay for their meal." Brenda smiled, reaching for the bill. "That's real nice of you, hun. I'll tell her." "No." Lucas stopped her, his hand covering the money. "You can't tell her it was me. If she knows it's charity, she might not accept it, or she'll feel small. And she's not small. She's the toughest person in this room." Brenda looked at Lucas with new appreciation. "So, what do I say?" Lucas thought for a second. He needed a cover story. Something plausible. "Tell her. Tell her the kitchen made a mistake," Lucas said, his mind working quickly. "Tell her they accidentally made a turkey dinner plate and it was going to go to waste, so you brought it out for her. On the house." "And the check?" Brenda asked. Take care of it with this. Keep the change as your tip. But bring her food first. She needs to eat." Brenda nodded, tucking the $50 into her apron. "You're a good man." "I'm just a guy who hates eating alone," Lucas muttered, though that wasn't the whole truth. He watched Brenda walk back toward the kitchen. His heart was beating faster than it did during some missions. He watched the mother, Clara, wiping ketchup off her son's face. She looked exhausted, fragile and beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with makeup and everything to do with strength. He waited for the mistake to be delivered. He wanted to see if the lie would hold. He wanted to see her eat. The diner hummed with the low-frequency energy of people trying to be happy on a holiday. For Clara, however, the atmosphere was a thin veil over a pit of anxiety. She watched Noah and Eli devour their sandwiches with a mix of joy and heartache. Noah had ketchup on his chin. Eli was methodically dipping his fries in a specific pattern. They were happy. That was the mission. But Clara's stomach cramped again, a sharp reminder of the granola bar that had long since dissolved. She took another sip of ice water, the lemon growing bitter as the rind soaked. She focused on the ice cubes melting, trying to meditate on the physics of it rather than the hunger. Then she saw Brenda approaching. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. Why is she coming back? They hadn't finished. Did I do something wrong? Did the card get declined in my head? Did the boys make a mess? She instinctively straightened up, her defensive walls rising. Brenda wasn't holding a coffee pot. She was holding a large oval plate, heavy with steam and color. She slid the plate onto the table right in front of Clara. It was a masterpiece of comfort food, thick slices of roasted turkey breast glistening with savory gravy, a mound of mashed potatoes with a crater of butter, green beans with bacon bits, a generous scoop of stuffing that smelled of sage and thyme, and a dinner roll, golden and warm. Clara stared at the food, then up at Brenda, panic flashing in her eyes. I didn't order this," Clara stammered, her voice tight. "There must be a mistake. I can't pay for this." Her hand instinctively went to her pocket, protecting the $15 as if the plate of food were a threat to their survival. Brenda waved a hand dismissively, acting her part with Oscar-worthy casualness. "Oh, hush now, honey. The kitchen messed up a ticket. Cook made an extra turkey special for a guy at the counter who left early. If you don't eat it, I have to throw it in the trash bin out back, and I hate wasting food on Thanksgiving. It's bad luck." Clara looked at the food. "The trash?" "Straight in the bin," Brenda lied smoothly. "Unless you can help me out. I'd hate to see good gravy go to waste." The boys stopped eating their grilled cheese. Their eyes were wide, fixed on the turkey. "Mom, look at the potatoes," Noah whispered. Clara looked at Brenda. She saw the softness in the waitress's eyes, a kindness that went beyond customer service. She knew, deep down, that kitchens didn't just mess up full holiday platters like this. But she also knew that refusing this kindness would be an act of pride, not dignity. And pride didn't fill stomachs. Clara's voice wavered. She swallowed the lump in her throat. "I suppose we shouldn't waste it." "Good," Brenda smiled, placing a set of silverware down. "Enjoy it, darling. I'll bring some extra napkins." As Brenda walked away, Clara stared at the plate. The steam rose up, carrying the scent of rosemary and butter, and it broke her. For a second, she had to blink rapidly to keep tears from spilling into the mashed potatoes. "Mom, are you going to eat?" Eli asked, concerned. "Yes," Clara whispered. "Yes, I am." She cut a piece of turkey, forked some stuffing, and took a bite. The flavor was explosive: salt, fat, warmth. It wasn't just food, it was fuel. It was the feeling of being cared for, even by a stranger, even by a lie. Her body relaxed instantly, the tension in her neck unspooling as the nutrients hit her system. She hadn't realized how cold she was until the warmth of the food spread through her chest. "Here," she said, cutting a piece of the turkey and holding it out to Noah. "Try. It's good." Noah chewed happily. They shared the meal. The boys had their sandwiches, but they picked at her plate, stealing green beans and dipping their fries in her gravy. For 20 minutes, the booth wasn't a place of scarcity. It was a banquet. They laughed when Eli got butter on his nose. They debated whether the cranberry sauce was jelly or fruit. Clara felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. She didn't know who or how, but the universe had given her a break. Across the diner, hidden in the shadows of his corner booth, Lucas watched. He didn't eat his own food. He just drank his black coffee, watching the woman's shoulders drop. He saw the color return to her cheeks. He saw the way she laughed. A genuine, soft laugh when one of the twins did something silly. A strange feeling stirred in Lucas's chest. It wasn't the adrenaline of combat, nor the numb silence of his cabin. It was a warm, quiet hum. It felt like purpose. He had spent 2 years trying to find a mission that mattered. He had traveled the world, fought bad guys, saved hostages. But watching a tired nurse eat a plate of turkey felt like a victory more significant than any medal he had locked away in his drawer. He checked his watch. He needed to leave before they finished. He didn't want credit. He wanted to be a ghost. The plates were scraped clean. Even the parsley garnish had been inspected by Noah. Clara leaned back against the vinyl seat, feeling full for the first time in weeks. Then the reality returned. The check. She mentally prepared herself. Okay, the turkey was free. The boys' meals are $10 tax. I have the cash, she signaled Brenda. Can we get the check, please? Clara asked, reaching for her purse. Brenda pulled a small paper slip from her apron and placed it face down on the table. Clara took a breath, opened her purse, and pulled out the crumpled bills. She flipped the check over. Her eyes tried to focus on the numbers, but she frowned. She blinked and looked again. Total. 0.00 scrawled across the bottom in blue ink was a note. Happy Thanksgiving. Paid in full. Clara stared at the paper. The world seemed to tilt slightly. She looked up at Brenda, who was refilling water at the next table. Excuse me, Clara called out, her voice trembling. Brenda. Brenda came over, a knowing smile on her lips. There's a mistake, Clara said, her hands shaking as she held up the receipt. It says 0. No mistake, hun, Brenda said softly, leaning in so the other customers wouldn't hear. A gentleman took care of it, everything. The boys' meals, your mistake plate, and he left a tip for me already. You're all set. Clara felt the air leave her lungs. Who? Who would do that? $15. She still had her $15. That meant gas for the week. That meant she could buy milk tomorrow. That meant she didn't have to panic. He's over there. Brenda tilted her head toward the corner booth. The quiet fella in the leather jacket. He's getting up to leave. Clara turned. She saw him. A tall, broad-shouldered man standing by the coat rack near the door. He was putting on a dark beanie. He had a stillness about him, a way of moving that was precise and controlled. He hadn't looked at them once while they were eating, or so she thought. He was walking toward the door. Clara didn't think. Impulse took over. The same impulse that made her run toward a crashing patient while others froze. She couldn't let him just vanish into the night. Boys, stay here for 1 second, she commanded, sliding out of the booth. Mom? Noah asked. Just 1 second. Stay. Clara walked fast. Her sneakers squeaked on the linoleum floor. The diner was busy, noisy, but her focus was entirely on the back of the man's leather jacket. He pushed the door open, the bell jingling. Wait, Clara called out. It wasn't a shout, but it was firm. Lucas froze. He was half out the door, the cold wind hitting his face. He sighed. He had almost made it out undetected. He debated just keeping walking. He was good at disappearing, but that would be rude. And he wasn't rude. He turned around slowly, holding the door open with one hand. They stood in the entryway of the Rusty Spoon, caught between the warmth of the diner and the freezing wind of the parking lot. Clara stopped a few feet from him. Up close, he was intimidating. He was tall, his face shadowed by the beanie and the dim light. He had a scar above his eye that looked like a story of violence. But his eyes, they were a surprising shade of grey, and they weren't scary. They were tired. Clara felt small in her scrubs and old coat, but she squared her shoulders. "You paid for us," she stated. It wasn't a question. Lucas looked at her. He saw the fatigue etched into her face, the fine lines around her eyes that came from squinting at monitors and holding back tears. He recognized the look. It was the 1,000-yard stare of a civilian warrior. "It was Thanksgiving," Lucas said, his voice deep and raspy, like gravel moving over velvet. "Kitchen makes mistakes. Someone has to eat them." Clara shook her head, a small, disbelief-filled smile touching her lips. "The kitchen didn't make a mistake, and grilled cheese isn't free. You paid." Lucas shifted his weight. He wasn't used to being thanked. In his line of work, you did the job and got out. You didn't stick around for the accolades. "You looked like you had a long day," Lucas said simply. "I've had long days. I know what they feel like." Clara looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the military posture, the hyper-awareness in his gaze. "You were in the service?" she asked. "Navy," he said. "A long time ago. Or so it feels." "I'm a nurse," she said. "ER and trauma." "I know," Lucas nodded. "I saw the scrubs and the shoes. Only nurses and soldiers wear shoes like that." A moment of silence passed between them. It wasn't awkward. It was heavy with unspoken understanding. They were two people who dealt with the fragility of life for a living. "I have $15, Clara blurted out. She didn't know why she said it. It was embarrassing, but she wanted him to know the magnitude of what he did. "That's all I had to my name tonight. $15. Because of you. I can put gas in my car tomorrow. I can get to work. You didn't just buy dinner. You bought me a week of safety." Her voice cracked on the last word. Lucas felt a tightening in his throat. He looked at this woman, standing there with her heart open, admitting her vulnerability to a stranger. It was braver than anything he had done in the field. "You're raising 2 boys alone," Lucas said, glancing past her to the booth where Noah and Eli were pressing their noses against the window. "That's a harder job than anything I ever did. You deserved a hot meal." "Thank you," Clara said softly. "I'm Clara." "Lucas," he replied. He didn't offer his hand. He kept his hands in his pockets, creating a boundary. He wasn't looking for a friend. He wasn't looking for a romance. He was a broken man trying to fix himself, and he didn't want to drag anyone else into his wreckage. "Well, Lucas," Clara said, "if you ever find yourself in the ER at Riverton General, though I hope you don't, ask for Clara. I'll make sure you get the good jello." Lucas cracked a smile. It was small, barely a twitch of the corner of his mouth, but it changed his whole face. It made him look 5 years younger. "I'll keep that in mind," he said. "Happy Thanksgiving," she said. "Happy Thanksgiving, Clara." He stepped back, letting the door close between them. Clara stood there for a moment, watching him walk to a black pickup truck. He moved efficiently, getting in and driving away without looking back. She took a deep breath, inhaling the cold air mixed with the diner smells. She felt lighter. Not just because of the money, but because for the first time in months, she felt seen. Not as a nurse, not as a struggling mom, but as a human being who was fighting a hard battle. She walked back to the table where the boys were waiting. "Who was that giant man?" Noah asked, eyes wide. "That," Clara said, helping them into their coats, "was a very kind stranger. Come on, boys, let's go home. We have to turn on the heat tonight." With the money saved, she could afford to run the heater for a few hours. It was a luxury. The weeks following Thanksgiving were a blur of grey skies and freezing rain, typical for Riverton Falls. But for Clara, the memory of that dinner acted like a small ember of warmth she carried in her chest. She went back to the grind, double shifts, Sick kids. The car making a new rattling noise. But whenever the panic started to rise, that suffocating feeling of drowning in bills, she remembered the taste of the turkey and the gray eyes of the stranger. It was proof that the universe wasn't entirely hostile. She didn't expect to see him again. Riverton Falls wasn't huge, but people moved in different circles. She moved in the circle of poverty and pediatric appointments. He moved in... well, she didn't know where he moved. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning, Clara was at the grocery store. It was her day off, and she was doing the budget shop, buying generic brands, checking expiration dates for discounts, and calculating the tax on a calculator as she went. She was in the cereal aisle, debating between the generic toasted oats and the name brand ones that the boys begged for. The name brand was $2 more. She reached for the generic box. The ones on the top shelf have less sugar. A voice rumbled behind her. Clara jumped, nearly dropping the box. She spun around. Lucas was standing there. He looked different in the fluorescent light of the grocery store. Less shadowy, more real. He was wearing a flannel shirt and jeans, pushing a cart that contained only coffee, eggs, and a bag of apples. "Lucas," she breathed. "Clara," he nodded. "Sorry, didn't mean to sneak up on you." "Old habits?" she teased gently. "Something like that," he admitted. He pointed to the cereal. "My sister has kids. She swears by the one in the green box. Says it keeps them full longer." Clara looked at the green box. It was even more expensive. She sighed. "I'm sure it's great, but we're sticking to the classics today." Lucas looked at her cart. It was sparse, essentials only. He looked at his own cart, which was equally sparse, but by choice, not necessity. "How have the boys been?" he asked. "Noah and Eli?" Clara smiled, surprised he remembered. "They're good. Noah lost a tooth. Eli is trying to build a robot out of cardboard boxes. They still talk about the giant turkey man." Lucas looked down at his boots, clearly uncomfortable with the hero title. "It was just dinner. To you, maybe," Clara said, her voice dropping. "To us, it was everything." An awkward silence stretched between them. The overhead speakers played a terrible Muzak version of Jingle Bells. "I'm actually headed to the hardware store next," Lucas said, shifting the subject. "I'm fixing up an old cabin by the lake. Do you know anyone who knows about insulation? I'm tearing out dry rot." Clara laughed. "You're asking the wrong girl. I can fix a broken arm, but I can't fix a wall." Then she paused. "But my dad was a contractor before he passed. I have his old reference books in the garage. Step-by-step guides. You're welcome to borrow them." It was an olive branch, a reason to continue the conversation. Lucas hesitated. He usually worked alone. He didn't like owing people favors. But looking at Clara, he realized he didn't want to walk away just yet. "I'd appreciate that," he said. "I really would." "I live on Elm Street," Clara said. "Number 402, the one with the..." She hesitated. "The one with the blue sedan that sounds like a dying lawnmower." Lucas smirked. "I know the car. I heard it in the parking lot that night." "Hey, don't make fun of old Betsy," Clara defended mockingly. "She's loyal." "I'll swing by," Lucas said. "Maybe later today, if that's okay." "That's fine," Clara said. Her heart did a little flutter that she immediately tried to suppress. "He's just borrowing books. Don't get ideas. He's a Navy SEAL. You're a tired nurse." "See you, Clara," he said, pushing his cart past her. "See you, Lucas." She watched him go. Then she looked at the shelf. She grabbed the green box of cereal, the healthy one. She would put back the dish soap to afford it. It felt like a special occasion. The afternoon sun was already dipping below the tree line when Lucas pulled his black pickup truck up to the curb of 402 Elm Street. The house was a small, single-story bungalow with white siding that was graying with age. A large oak tree dominated the front yard, its roots buckling the sidewalk slightly. It was the kind of house that looked tired, much like its owner. Lucas stepped out of his truck. He wore his work boots and a canvas jacket, carrying nothing but a sense of hesitation. He wasn't used to visiting people. For the last 2 years, his social interactions had been limited to cashiers and the occasional nod to a fellow runner on the trail. He walked up the path. As he placed his weight on the bottom step of the porch, the wood groaned and shifted violently to the right. Lucas instinctively adjusted his balance, catching himself before he tripped. He frowned, crouching down to inspect the wood. Rot. The stringer was detaching from the riser. It was a broken ankle waiting to happen. He stood up and knocked on the door. A moment later, the door swung open. Clara stood there, minus the scrubs. She was wearing a thick wool sweater that looked a size too big in jeans. Her hair was down, framing her face in soft waves. She looked softer, but the tiredness was still there, lingering around her eyes like a shadow. "You found it," she smiled, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Hard to miss. It's the only house with a tricycle parked in the hedges." Lucas deadpanned. Clara laughed, a genuine sound. "Noah's parking skills need work. Come in, please. Excuse the mess the boys are creating." Lucas stepped inside. The house was warm, smelling of cinnamon and laundry detergent. It wasn't messy, but it was lived in. Toys were scattered in corners, drawings were taped to the walls, and there was a pile of laundry on the sofa waiting to be folded. "Mom, is that the turkey man?" Noah and Eli came skidding into the hallway in their socks. They stopped abruptly when they saw Lucas's size in their small living room. "Boys, this is Mr. Hale," Clara corrected gently. "Lucas, these are the terrors, Noah and Eli." Lucas looked down at them. He didn't smile in a goofy way. He looked at them with serious respect, the way he would look at a new recruit. He crouched down so he was at their eye level. "Gentlemen," Lucas said, extending a hand. Noah giggled and shook it. Eli, the observer, studied Lucas's calloused hand before shaking it solemnly. "Did you really eat the bad turkey so we could have the good turkey?" Noah asked. Clara gasped slightly. "Noah," Lucas chuckled, a low rumble. "Something like that. I hear you guys are robot engineers." Eli's eyes lit up. "We're making a Optimus Prime, but the cardboard keeps falling down. Structural integrity is key," Lucas said seriously. "You need a solid base." "Show me later?" The boys nodded vigorously. Clara watched the interaction, her heart doing a strange flip. She led Lucas to the kitchen where a stack of old hardcover books sat on the table. "Here they are," she said. "Basic carpentry, wiring, and plumbing. My dad's Bibles. He wrote notes in the margins, so ignore the scribbles about football scores." Lucas ran a hand over the worn covers. "These are great. Old school. Better than the stuff on the internet." "Thank you, Clara." "You're welcome. Coffee?" "I'd love some." As Clara bustled around the kitchen, Lucas leaned against the counter. "Your front step," he said. "The bottom one. It's rotted through." "I know," Clara sighed, pouring water into the machine. "I put a warning sign on it last week, but the rain washed it away. I tell the boys to jump over it. It's on the list. The very long list." "You have a hammer?" Lucas asked. "I think so. In the junk drawer. Why?" "I can fix it now. Takes 10 minutes. I have some lumber in my truck from my own place." "Oh, Lucas, no." Clara turned around, waving her hands. "You didn't come here to work. You came for books." "I can't walk away from a safety hazard, Clara," Lucas said, his voice dropping into that calm, non-negotiable tone he used in the field. "Not with kids running around. It's a trade. You give me coffee, I give you a step that doesn't break a leg. Deal?" Clara looked at him. She saw he wasn't offering charity. He was offering a service. He needed to be useful. She understood that need. "Deal," she whispered. "But you stay for dinner. It's spaghetti night. Not as fancy as turkey, but it's hot." "I like spaghetti," Lucas said. And just like that, the ex-SEAL walked out to his truck, grabbed his toolbox and started dismantling her front porch. That evening marked the beginning of a pattern. Lucas didn't just fix the step. He noticed the drafty window in the living room and caulk-sealed it. He noticed the squeaky hinge on the back door and oiled it. He wasn't invasive, he was just present. He started coming by twice a week. Ostensibly, it was to return a book or ask Clara about a specific chapter on insulation. But in reality, it was because the silence of his cabin was too loud, and the chaos of Clara's house was the only thing that quieted the noise in his head. For the twins, Lucas became a figure of immense fascination. He was big, he was strong, and he knew how to fix everything. One Saturday afternoon, the education began. Lucas was in the backyard, fixing a section of the fence that had blown down in a storm. Noah and Eli were hovering, watching his every move. "You guys want to help?" Lucas asked, not looking up from his measurements. "Yes," they shouted. Lucas stood up and wiped his hands on his jeans. "Okay, but if you work with me, you follow the rules. Rule number 1, safety. We respect the tools. Rule number 2, we listen. Rule number 3, we finish the job." He wasn't coddling them, he was teaching them. "Eli, hold the tape measure here," Lucas instructed. "Noah, hand me the pencil." He taught them the importance of precision. "Why do we measure twice?" Lucas asked, marking a line on a 2x4. "So we don't mess up," Noah guessed. "Because wood costs money," Lucas said, looking at Clara, who was watching from the window, "and because time is valuable. If you rush, you make mistakes. If you make mistakes, you have to do it again. Panic makes you slow. Calm makes you fast. Remember that. Panic makes you slow. Calm makes you fast." It was a mantra from the SEAL teams. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Adapted for 6-year-olds. But Clara, listening through the screen door, felt the words resonate with her too. She lived her life in a state of high-speed panic. Maybe she needed to learn this too. Later that day, Eli was getting frustrated. He was trying to screw a bolt into a piece of wood for a project, but the screwdriver kept slipping. He threw the screwdriver down, his face red. "I can't do it. It's stupid," Eli shouted. Lucas didn't scold him. He knelt down. "Pick it up," Lucas said calmly. "No." "Pick it up, Eli." Eli sniffled and picked up the tool. "Look at me," Lucas said. "Take a deep breath. In through your nose, hold for 4 seconds, out through your mouth." He did the breathing exercise with the boy, box breathing. A technique used to lower heart rate in combat situations. "Your brain is angry right now," Lucas explained. "When your brain is angry, your hands don't work right. You have to cool the brain down. Try it again. Slow." Eli took a breath. He set the screwdriver into the slot. He turned it slowly. The screw bit into the wood and turned. "I did it," Eli beamed. "You did," Lucas nodded, ruffling the boy's hair. "Control your breath, control the situation." Clara walked out onto the porch with a tray of lemonade. She had tears in her eyes. She had been trying to teach Eli to manage his frustration for years, but Lucas, with his quiet, unwavering authority, had reached him in 5 minutes. "You're good with them," Clara said as Lucas sat on the newly fixed step to drink his lemonade. "They're good kids," Lucas shrugged. "They just need to know the parameters. Kids like structure. It makes them feel safe." "I try," Clara admitted, sitting next to him, leaving a respectable distance between them. "But I'm always so tired. Sometimes I just give in to the chaos." "You're doing the job of 2 people, Clara," Lucas said, looking at the horizon. "In the teams, we have a swim buddy. You never go into the water alone. If you get tangled in a net, your buddy cuts you out. You've been swimming alone for a long time." Clara looked at his profile. The sun highlighted the gray in his beard. "Are you offering to be my swim buddy, Lucas?" she asked, her voice light but her heart pounding. Lucas turned to look at her. The air between them crackled with something that wasn't just friendship. It was the recognition of 2 survivors finding a shoreline. "I'm just fixing a fence." he deflected softly. "But I'm not going anywhere." It was enough. December arrived with a vengeance. A blizzard hit Riverton Falls, burying the town under 2 feet of snow. The roads were closed. The power lines were heavy with ice. Clara was home. The hospital had called and told non-essential staff to stay off the roads. She was huddled in the living room with the boys, buried under blankets. The power had gone out an hour ago. The house was rapidly cooling down. They were playing Go Fish by candlelight when a heavy thumping sound came from the front door. Clara jumped. She went to the door and peered through the peephole. A snow-covered figure stood there. She opened the door. It was Lucas. He looked like a yeti, covered in white, carrying a large duffel bag and a portable propane heater. "Lucas, how did you get here?" Clara exclaimed, pulling him inside. "Truck has 4-wheel drive," he said, stomping the snow off his boots. "But I had to hike the last 2 blocks. The plow hasn't come through." "Why did you come?" "Power's out in the whole grid," Lucas said, setting up the heater in the center of the living room. "I figured you guys have electric baseboard heating." "Which means you have no heat." "We were just bundling up," Clara said, touched by his concern. "Not enough when it drops to 0 tonight," Lucas said. He lit the portable heater. A blue flame hissed to life, and warmth began to radiate immediately. "I brought MREs, meals ready to eat, flashlights, and extra wool blankets." "Cool. Army food," Noah shouted, diving into the bag. That night was unlike any Clara had experienced. The storm raged outside, wind howling like a banshee, but inside, in the circle of light from the heater and candles, it was peaceful. They ate the MREs. Spaghetti with meat sauce for the boys, chili mac for Lucas. Lucas showed them how the chemical heater packets worked to warm the food without a stove. It was another science lesson. After the boys fell asleep in a nest of blankets on the floor, Clara and Lucas sat on the sofa, watching the blue flame of the heater. "Why did you leave the Navy?" Clara asked. She had never dared to ask before, but the intimacy of the storm made it feel right. Lucas was silent for a long time. He turned a flashlight over in his hands. "I didn't leave because of a specific bad day," he said quietly. "I left because I stopped knowing how to come home. Every time I came back, the world felt loud, fake. Everyone was worrying about traffic or what to watch on TV, and I had just come from places where people were worrying about surviving the night." He looked at Clara. "I felt like a ghost. I couldn't connect. So I got out. I thought if I moved to the woods, I could just be alone and it would be better. But alone is just alone." Clara reached out and placed her hand over his. His hand was rough, scarred, and warm. "You're not a ghost, Lucas," she said firmly. "You're the most real thing that's happened to us in years. You see us. People don't see the poor, Lucas. They look right through us. But you saw me at the diner. You saw the boys. You saw the broken step." Lucas turned his hand over and laced his fingers with hers. It was a tentative, careful movement. "You saved me too, Clara," he confessed. "That night at the diner, I was writing in my notebook. I was writing a list of reasons to keep trying. The page was blank. Then I saw you fighting for your kids with nothing but $15 and a glass of lemon water. You filled the page." Clara's breath hitched. She squeezed his hand. "We're a good team," she whispered. "We are," he agreed. He didn't kiss her. It wasn't the moment for passion. It was the moment for anchoring. They sat there, hand in hand, listening to the storm try to break in, knowing that for the first time they were strong enough to weather it because they weren't doing it alone. But as the morning approached, a new challenge was looming. The storm was passing, but reality was about to intrude. Lucas's past wasn't just about emotional scars. There were practical reasons he had isolated himself, things he hadn't told Clara. And Clara was about to face a financial crisis that $15 couldn't fix. Something that would test this fragile new trust to its breaking point. The snow from the great blizzard began to melt. turning Riverton Falls into a landscape of gray slush and dripping eaves. The crisis that Lucas had sensed wasn't a monster in the woods or a soldier from his past. It was something far more mundane and far more deadly to the working class. A mechanical failure. It was a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after the storm. Clara was running late. The boys had lost a shoe. It was always the left shoe. And the toast had burned. The stress levels were already redlining as she strapped them into the back seat of Old Betsy, her blue sedan. She turned the key, grind, click, silence. Clara's stomach dropped. She tried again. Grind, whir, clunk, smoke, thin and acrid, drifted up from the hood. "No," Clara whispered. "Please, no, not today. I have a review with the chief of nursing today." She tried again, pleading with the machine, patting the dashboard, but the car was dead. It wasn't just a dead battery. The sound was deep, internal, the sound of metal shearing against metal. She rested her forehead against the steering wheel. The silence in the car was heavy. "Mom, is the car sleeping?" Noah asked from the back. Clara didn't answer immediately. She was doing the math. Tow truck, $150. Diagnosis, $100. Repair, likely over $1,000 based on the sound. Bank account, $340. She was trapped. Without the car, she couldn't get the boys to school. She couldn't get to the hospital. If she missed her shift today of all days, she could be written up. 2 write-ups meant probation. Probation meant no overtime. No overtime meant no rent. It was the domino effect of poverty. One small push, and the whole wall comes down. She pulled out her phone to call a taxi, knowing the fare would eat her grocery budget for the week. But before she could dial, a familiar rumble shook the puddle next to her car. Lucas's black truck pulled up alongside her. He rolled down the window. He didn't ask, "What's wrong?" He knew. He could smell the burnt oil from 10 feet away. "Pop the hood," Lucas commanded gently. Clara stepped out into the slush, popping the latch. Lucas was already out of his truck, leaning over the engine bay. He inspected the belts, checked the oil, looked at the block. He stood up, wiping grease on a rag he kept in his back pocket. His face was grim. "It's the timing belt," Lucas said. "It snapped. And when it snapped, it likely took the valves with it. The engine is seized, Clara." "Can you fix it?" Clara asked, her voice trembling. She knew he could fix steps and fences. Surely he could fix this. Lucas looked at her, his gray eyes full of apology. "I can fix almost anything, Clara. But this, the parts alone would cost more than the car is worth. It's a total loss. It's time to call it." Clara felt the tears prick her eyes. She fought them back. She was a trauma nurse. She dealt with life and death. Crying over a car was stupid, but it wasn't just a car. It was her freedom. It was her shield. "I have to get to work," she said, her voice sounding thin and brittle. "I have to." "Get in the truck," Lucas said, opening the passenger door. "Move the car seats. I'm driving you." "Lucas, you have things to do. You can't be my chauffeur." "I have nothing more important than this," he interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "We are a team, remember? Swim buddies. Get in." As they drove the boys to school and then headed toward the hospital, Clara was silent. She stared out the window, her mind racing, trying to figure out how to buy a car with 0 credit and no savings. Lucas glanced at her. He saw the panic she was trying to hide. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. He had a solution, but he knew Clara. Her pride was her armor. If he offered her money, she would feel like a charity case. He had to be tactical. He had to outmaneuver her pride to save her future. 2 days later, Clara was navigating the logistics of life without a car. She was taking the bus, which added 2 hours to her daily commute. She was exhausted, dark circles forming under her eyes. When she got home on Thursday evening, walking from the bus stop with grocery bags cutting into her fingers, she saw it. Parked in her driveway, right where Old Betsy used to be, was a silver SUV. It wasn't brand new, Lucas knew a brand new car would be too much for her to accept, but it was solid. A Toyota Highlander, about 4 years old. Safe, reliable, all-wheel drive for the winter. Lucas was sitting on her front porch steps, whittling a piece of wood. Clara stopped. She dropped the grocery bags on the sidewalk. "Lucas," she said, walking up the path. "Whose car is that?" "Yours," he said, not looking up from the wood. "No," Clara said instantly. "Absolutely not. I can't pay for that. And I can't take it from you. That's a $20,000 car, Lucas. Maybe more." Lucas stood up. He put the knife away. He walked down the steps to meet her. "It's already paid for. Title is in the glove box. Signed over to you." "I can't accept it." Clara's voice rose, a mix of gratitude and anger. "I am not a charity case, Lucas. I have worked for everything I have. I can't just take this." "What do you think I am?" "I think you're a bad investment," Lucas said calmly. Clara froze. "Excuse me? If I was a bank, you'd be a bad investment right now," Lucas continued, his voice steady and clinical. "You're spending 4 hours a day commuting. That's 20 hours a week. In those 20 hours, you could be picking up 2 extra shifts. You're losing money by not having a car. You're burning yourself out, which means eventually you'll get sick, and then you can't work at all. And then who takes care of Noah and Eli?" He stepped closer. "In the military, we have a concept called a force multiplier, a tool that makes the soldier more effective. This car isn't a gift, Clara. It's a force multiplier. I'm not giving you charity. I'm securing the perimeter for the squad." Clara stared at him. "The squad? You, me, the boys," Lucas said. "That's the squad. And I don't let my squad go into battle without the right gear. But the money," Clara whispered. "Lucas, you're renovating a cabin. You don't have this kind of money lying around." Lucas sighed. He looked down at his boots, then back at her. It was time for the truth he had been holding back. "I didn't just leave the Navy with a pension, Clara. I was an officer. I was single. I was deployed for 10 years. I didn't spend a dime. I invested it. I bought tech stocks in 2010. I bought land." He looked her in the eye. "I have money, Clara. More than I will ever need. I drive an old truck because I like it, not because I have to. I live in a cabin because I want quiet, not because I'm poor." Clara was stunned. She processed this. The flannel shirts, the simple life. It was all a choice. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "Because," Lucas said, his voice cracking slightly with vulnerability, "people look at you differently when they see dollar signs. They want things. But you, that night at the diner, you didn't know who I was. You didn't care. You just offered me Jell-O. You liked me, Clara, not the bank account." He reached out and took her hands. "The money is just energy stored up. It's useless if it sits in a bank while the people I care about are suffering. Please, let me use this tool. Let me help you get your time back. The boys need their mom more than they need you on a bus." Clara looked at the silver SUV. She looked at Lucas. She realized that refusing him wasn't dignity. It was fear. Fear of relying on someone. Fear of it being taken away. But looking at Lucas, she didn't see someone who would take it away. She saw the man who ate the mistake turkey so she wouldn't feel bad. She saw the man who taught her son to breathe. "A force multiplier?" she asked, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Standard issue," Lucas smiled back. "Keys are in your pocket. I slipped them in when you dropped the groceries." Clara laughed, a sound that released weeks of tension. She threw her arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder. He smelled of sawdust and rain. "Thank you." She sobbed into his jacket. "Thank you." Lucas held her tight, his eyes closing. He had disarmed bombs, breached compounds, and survived wars. But holding this woman, providing for this family, this was the first time he felt like he had truly completed a mission. 1 year later, Thanksgiving Day. The Rusty Spoon was just as crowded, just as loud. and smelled just as strongly of onions and pie as it had the year before. The wind outside was howling, but inside, the booth in the back was warm. This time, the table was full. Clara sat on one side, looking radiant. She wasn't wearing scrubs. She was wearing a nice dress, and the shadows under her eyes were gone. She had been promoted to charge nurse 3 months ago, a promotion made possible because she had the reliable transportation to take the necessary management courses. Next to her sat Lucas. He looked less like a coiled spring and more like a man at peace. The scar was still there, but the haunted look in his eyes had been replaced by a watchful contentment. Across from them, Noah and Eli were engaged in a fierce battle over who got the last dinner roll. They had grown. Noah's front teeth had come in, and Eli was wearing a watch that Lucas had given him, teaching him how to tell time on an analog face. "Okay, settle down," Lucas said, his voice low but commanding instant attention. "Report." "I am thankful for video games," Noah announced. "I am thankful for the new dog," Eli said. They had adopted a stray mutt named Sarge in the summer. "I am thankful," Clara said, reaching across the table to take Lucas's hand. "For $15. Lucas squeezed her hand. "I'm thankful for the appetite to eat a second turkey dinner," he joked. Their food arrived. 4 turkey specials. No sharing required. No water with lemon unless they wanted it. As they ate, the bell above the door jingled. A young woman walked in. She was alone, carrying a toddler on her hip. She looked exhausted. Her coat was thin. She sat at the counter and ordered a cup of soup and a glass of water. She began to feed the soup to the toddler, taking none for herself. Clara saw her. She stopped eating. She looked at Lucas. Lucas had already seen her. He was already reaching for his wallet. But then Eli spoke up. "Mom?" "Lucas?" Eli whispered. "Yeah, bud?" Lucas asked. "Can we do the trick?" Eli asked. "What trick?" Clara asked. "The kitchen mistake trick," Eli said seriously. "I have my allowance. I have $10. Noah has 5. Noah nodded vigorously, pulling a crumpled $5 bill from his pocket. "We want to buy her the big dinner, like the giant turkey man did for us." Clara felt her heart swell so big she thought it might burst. She looked at Lucas, and she saw tears shining in the ex-SEAL's eyes. "That is a tactical decision I approve of," Lucas said, his voice thick with emotion. "But keep your money, boys. You're saving for that Lego set. I'll cover the asset acquisition. You guys handle the delivery." Lucas handed a $50 bill to Brenda, who was still working the same section. Brenda winked. She knew the drill. They watched as Brenda walked over to the young mother at the counter. They watched the confusion, the refusal, and then the acceptance as Brenda delivered the lie about the kitchen mistake. They watched the young mother take a bite of the turkey, and they saw her shoulders drop, the tension leaving her body, just as Clara's had a year ago. "It works," Noah whispered. "The magic works." Clara looked at her family. She realized that the true miracle of that first Thanksgiving wasn't the food, or the money, or even the car. It was the lesson. Kindness is an echo. You send it out, and it bounces off the walls of the universe, coming back to you when you least expect it, louder and stronger than before. Lucas lifted his glass of iced tea. "To the squad," he said. "To the squad," Clara, Noah, and Eli chorused. Outside, the snow began to fall, soft and gentle, covering the world in a clean white blanket. But inside, everything was warm,